In the closing elements of your address, you made reference to students not being seen as merely customers, right? Because ultimately they enroll, they owe fees, they have to pay those fees, often through loans and other forms of credit that they may have perhaps would have had access to. You then said that we should see failure as a necessary part of learning. And immediately I'm thinking, well, if I was a student, had incurred all that debt in order to enroll and seek this qualification, and I fail, that would be a very, very difficult dance in my head, shall we say.
Absolutely. And I mean, I think it's a really tough line to navigate. That on the one hand, your students are customers. They're paying for something and the customer's always right. And so they bring expectations. But on the other hand, the intellectual endeavor is one of challenge. You know, we should have a pedagogy of discomfort. I always say we have a pedagogy of discomfort with an ethic of care, that the institution really cares for you and makes spaces to demonstrate that care. But you should be discomforted. Some of your common sense understandings and assumptions about the world should be challenged. You should have to access really complicated knowledge that hurts your brain to get hold of. Otherwise, you know, you've got the certificate and it's meaningless. But we need to make spaces to talk to our students about these things. And I think too often our initial engagement with our students at orientation level is telling them, if you cheat, we will catch you. Don't plagiarize. It's all these kind of threatening, you know, only the few will pass. And I think we rather need to make spaces of conversations about learning is hard. You're going into new ways of thinking. Some might challenge you. You need to also find the agency to speak back. And some of you might come from schools where you were told to be quiet and sit and listen and, you know, really talk about what it means to be a seriously successful student. But in terms of failure, I would say the big problem is that our assessment systems don't allow for failure. So almost every assessment is high stakes. If you fail it, you're out, or you've got naught, or you've suddenly got to get 80% for the next test because you got 0%. We don't have enough spaces for students to mess up, to try things out, to experiment. And if we had systems where there was more flexibility, there were more opportunities to do some low stakes assessment before they did a high stakes one, where they could choose the top 4 out of 10 marks. You know, there are all sorts of ways to work around that, but typically, every test and essay and multiple choice assignment is for marks and you better pass. And that's not how we learn.
Absolutely not. You also made reference to epistemic points of view. How do you create an overarching one, I suppose, in your institution that ultimately serves, I will say, social justice? Because in a country as challenged as South Africa, we have to keep top of mind what this public good is in whatever form of higher education we offer.
Yeah, that's a really tough one, because that whole distinction between powerful knowledge which is principled, abstracted, theorized, that people can use when they encounter brand new, never thought of situations, and they can use that knowledge to address new problems. The distinction between that powerful knowledge and knowledge of the powerful that has been given status simply because of our colonial history, because of our apartheid history, because of the dominance of Western thinking in particular fields. To navigate those two is quite a challenge. And that's where a lot of decolonial scholars are, I think, giving us really good things to chew on and to make sense of. Now, I'm not a complete relativist where everyone's view is equal and anyone's theory, you know, I believe in gravity, but you believe that fairies pull things down to the earth. That's fine. You know, I mean, I'm making a joke, but, you know, I think it's dangerous to say anyone's knowledge is equal, but I think it's also very limited to think that the knowledge which is in our curriculum is the only understanding of the world. I think it's limited. I think there are spaces and opportunities for us to learn from each other, to see things in new ways. I'm inclined to think that we need to look quite critically at the blind spots in our own canons, in our own fields. I'm an expert in a particular area that I've been studying for many, many, many years. So inevitably, I believe I'm right on this. And I think it's so important that we are lifelong learners until our dying day. We constantly think there might be a different way of looking at this. There might be another voice that I haven't heard because I've only read texts from one geographic region. So I think a lot of it is about attitude to learning. And we can inculcate that in our students. And in a way that's also to try and deal with academic arrogance, is that I think a lot of our students don't realize that having a higher education is a huge privilege that is not afforded to many people. If you leave with a sense that you are somehow better than by virtue of having that education, there's a problem there. You want to know, yes, there are certain areas in which I have knowledge that maybe others who didn't have university don't have, and I can use that to their service. But to go into a space and think, I have this knowledge, so I'm better than my peers who didn't go to higher education, I think is again something that we enable by not having conversations with our students about, this is a privilege with a responsibility. This doesn't mean that you are more worthy than some human being who hasn't had your opportunities.
Couldn't agree more.